The moment I walked into my own venue and saw my family treating me like hired help was the sweetest revenge I never knew I needed. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about owning a business. It's about owning your worth when everyone else has forgotten it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Maya Chen, and I've always been the invisible daughter, in a family that only saw one child worth celebrating. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, I watched my older brother Tyler get praised for every mediocre achievement, while my genuine accomplishments were met with polite smiles and quick subject changes. Tyler was 3 years older, charming in that effortless way that made adults believe he was destined for greatness. And he'd been groomed since childhood to take over our family's real estate development company, Chen Development Group. On the other hand, was supposed to be grateful for whatever crumbs of attention came my way. The expectation was clear. Tyler would build the empire, and I would admire it from the sidelines, maybe help with some administrative work if I was lucky. The family narrative had been written long before I had a voice to object. The engagement party that changed everything happened on a crisp October evening at the Grandview Country Club, one of Portland's most prestigious venues. Tyler had just proposed to Amanda Richardson, daughter of a prominent local attorney, and our parents had spared no expense in celebrating what they called the union that would elevate the Chen family legacy. The irony of those words would hit me much later. I arrived at Grandview wearing a navy blue dress I'd saved 3 months to buy, my hair professionally styled for the first time in years, carrying a carefully chosen gift that had taken weeks of thoughtful consideration. I was genuinely happy for Tyler, despite everything. Love was love, and Amanda seemed to make him genuinely smile in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. But the moment I stepped through those mahogany doors, could feel the shift in energy. Our mother Linda rushed toward me, but not with the warm embrace I'd hoped for. Instead, she grabbed my arm and whispered urgently, "Maya, thank goodness you're here. We have a situation with the catering staff, and you know how good you are with these kinds of details." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "The event coordinator had to leave early, family emergency, and the serving staff is overwhelmed. You've always been so organized with parties and events. Could you just keep an eye on things? Make sure the champagne glasses stay filled. Coordinate with the kitchen?" I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Mom, I'm a guest. I'm Tyler's sister." She waved her hand dismissively. "Of course you are, sweetheart, but you know how important tonight is. Tyler's future in-laws are here, and we need everything to be perfect. You understand, don't you? You've always been so helpful." And just like that, I was relegated from family member to unpaid event staff. The worst part wasn't even the request itself. It was how naturally everyone accepted it. Tyler didn't question why his sister was suddenly arranging appetizer platters instead of mingling with guests. Amanda's parents didn't find it odd that one of the host family members was checking on the kitchen every 10 minutes. The 60-plus guests at that party simply assumed I belonged behind the scenes, not at the celebration. I spent 2 hours refilling water glasses, coordinating with overwhelmed servers, and solving small crises that the actual event coordinator should have handled. I watched from the kitchen doorway as Tyler gave a heartfelt speech about finding his soulmate, while Amanda's father spoke about welcoming a new son into their family. I saw my parents beam with pride as they talked about Tyler's vision for expanding Chen Development Group, about the bright future ahead for their accomplished son. Nobody mentioned me. Not once. The breaking point came when I overheard a conversation between Amanda's mother and one of our family friends near the kitchen entrance. I was arranging dessert plates when Mrs. Richardson's voice carried clearly through the doorway. "The Chen family is so impressive," she was saying. "David and Linda have done such a wonderful job raising Tyler. He's going to do amazing things with their business." "Oh yes, replied Mrs. Morrison, a longtime family friend. "Tyler has always been exceptional, such a natural leader, and it's sweet how Maya helps out with these little details. She's found her niche, hasn't she? Some people are meant to be in the spotlight, and others are better suited for supporting roles." Mrs. Richardson laughed softly. "Exactly. Every family needs someone who's comfortable handling the practical matters. Not everyone can be the star." I stood there holding a stack of dessert plates, feeling the weight of their casual dismissal settle over me like a heavy blanket. This was how they saw me. This was how everyone saw me. The helper, the supporter, the one who handled practical matters, while others achieved greatness. That night, after I'd finished cleaning up the champagne glasses and coordinating the final details with the catering staff, I drove home to my small studio apartment in Southeast Portland. My carefully chosen gift for Tyler and Amanda sat unopened on the kitchen counter of the venue. Nobody had noticed I'd brought anything. I sat on my small couch, still wearing that navy dress I'd saved for, and stared at the business card I'd picked up from the overwhelmed venue coordinator earlier that evening. Cascade events, making memories, one celebration at a time. The coordinator had been stressed and scattered, apologizing repeatedly for having to leave early due to a family emergency, grateful that I'd stepped in to help coordinate things. "You're really good at this," she'd told me before rushing out. "Have you ever considered event planning? You have a natural instinct for what needs to happen and when." I turned the card over in my hands, thinking about her words. I thought about how I'd effortlessly managed the flow of the evening, how I'd anticipated problems before they occurred, how I'd coordinated between kitchen staff and servers without breaking a sweat. I thought about all the family gatherings I'd organized over the years, the dinner parties I'd planned, the celebrations I'd coordinated, all dismissed as Maya being helpful, rather than Maya demonstrating real skill. But mostly, I thought about Mrs. Richardson's words, "Not everyone can be the star." That night, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my entire life. If my family saw me as support staff anyway, maybe it was time to become the best support staff in the business, but on my own terms, building something that belonged to me. I opened my laptop and began researching event planning certifications, venue management courses, and hospitality industry trends. I researched the most successful event venues in Portland, studied their business models, read every article I could find about creating memorable experiences. I stayed up until 4 in the morning, taking notes and building the foundation of a plan. The next morning, I called in sick to my administrative job at a small accounting firm, a job I'd taken after college because it was practical and stable, according to my parents. Instead, I drove to 3 different event venues around Portland, asking to speak with managers about the industry, about what made venues successful, about the challenges they faced. At the 3rd venue, a mid-sized space called Garden Gate Events, I met Marcus Rivera, a veteran event coordinator who'd been in the business for 15 years. He was dealing with a crisis, a wedding reception for 200 guests the following weekend, and his assistant coordinator had just quit without notice. "I couldn't help but overhear," I said, approaching him after he'd finished a frustrated phone call. "I have experience coordinating events, and I'm available this weekend if you need help." Marcus looked skeptical. "What kind of experience?" I could have mentioned family gatherings and dinner parties, but instead I talked about the previous night, how I'd stepped in when the coordinator left early, how I'd managed the flow of service, coordinated with multiple vendors, and ensured a seamless experience for guests. I didn't mention it was my brother's engagement party. "You did all that without formal training?" Marcus asked. "I have good instincts for what people need," I said simply. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That weekend, I worked my first professional event. Marcus paid me $200 for 12 hours of work. But more importantly, he offered me something I'd never received at home: recognition for my abilities. "You have a gift for this," he told me as we wrapped up the reception. The bride's mother came up to me 3 times tonight to compliment how smoothly everything was running. That doesn't happen often. Over the next 6 months, I worked every weekend with Marcus while keeping my day job. I learned about vendor management, contract negotiations, crisis resolution, and the 1,000 small details that separate good events from unforgettable ones. I studied the business side too: profit margins, overhead costs, marketing strategies, and client acquisition. Marcus became my unofficial mentor, teaching me not just the practical skills of event coordination, but the business acumen needed to succeed in hospitality. He'd started as a coordinator 20 years earlier and now owned 3 successful venues. He understood the industry from every angle. "The secret isn't just making events beautiful," he told me one evening as we cleaned up after a corporate gala. "It's understanding that every event is someone's most important day. Whether it's a wedding, a business launch, or a birthday party, you're holding space for their dreams. When you respect that responsibility, everything else follows." During those months, my family barely noticed my absence from their regular gatherings. When I did show up, they'd make casual comments about how I seemed busy lately, but nobody asked what I was doing with my time. I was still Maya the helper, Maya the supporter, Maya who handled practical matters while important people did important things. But I was also Maya who was learning to read a room instinctively. Maya who could anticipate what guests needed before they asked. Maya who was building a reputation among Portland's event professionals as someone who delivered flawless experiences under pressure. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was built through hundreds of small moments: successfully managing a vendor crisis during a thunderstorm, calming a panicked bride whose flowers arrived wrong, coordinating a surprise proposal that required split-second timing. Each event taught me something new about human nature, about what made celebrations meaningful, about the business of creating joy. After 8 months of weekend work, Marcus made me an offer that would accelerate everything. "I'm opening a 4th venue," he said over coffee one Tuesday morning. "High-end space, downtown waterfront, targeting corporate events and luxury weddings. I need someone to manage it full-time, someone who understands both the operational side and the client service side. The salary would be $60,000 to start, plus performance bonuses based on bookings. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making, doing work that energized me in ways my accounting job never had. But it would mean leaving the safety of my current position, stepping fully into an industry my family would likely see as just party planning. There's one more thing," Marcus added. "If the venue performs well in the first 2 years, I'd be open to discussing a partnership arrangement. You'd have the opportunity to own equity in something you're building." I thought about Mrs. Richardson's words, "Not everyone can be the star." I thought about my family's assumption that I was content in supporting roles. I thought about Tyler's bright future at Chen Development Group, and the fact that nobody had ever asked what kind of future I wanted for myself. "When do I start?" I asked. The new venture was called Cascade Events Center, and it occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated warehouse in Portland's Pearl District, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. The space was gorgeous but empty. I had 6 months to build it into Portland's premier event destination. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including me. I researched every successful venue in comparable markets, studied their pricing strategies, analyzed their service offerings. I built relationships with the city's best caterers, photographers, florists, and musicians. I created systems for everything: booking procedures, event timelines, vendor coordination, client communication. Most importantly, I learned to see events through the eyes of hosts rather than guests. I understood that people weren't just renting a space, They were investing in their most important memories. My job was to ensure those memories were flawless. The first major event at Cascade was a corporate product launch for a tech startup. 300 guests, live music, interactive product demonstrations, and a CEO who changed the program 3 times in the final week. It should have been a disaster, but instead it became our calling card. The event ran so smoothly that attendees assumed we'd been operating for years. Word spread quickly in Portland's business community. Within 6 months, we were booking events, 8 weeks in advance. Within a year, we had a waiting list for prime dates. The revenue numbers exceeded every projection Marcus had made. True to his word, after 18 months of success, Marcus offered me a partnership stake in Cascade Events Center. By that point, I was essentially running the venue independently, handling everything from client relations to vendor negotiations to staff management. The partnership made official what had already become reality. This was my business, my vision, my success. But success in the event industry taught me something else. Portland's social circles were smaller than they appeared. The same families, the same businesses, the same social groups rotated through different venues for different occasions. It was only a matter of time before my 2 worlds would collide. That collision came 3 years after the engagement party, on a rainy Thursday afternoon in February. I was in my office at Cascade, reviewing contracts for upcoming spring weddings, when my assistant Sophia knocked on the door. "Maya, I have a woman here inquiring about booking the venue for a wedding. Reception in June. She says it's for the Chen family?" My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. Chen family? She introduced herself as Linda Chen. She's asking about availability for a Saturday in June, expecting around 200 guests. Premium package. I felt my heart rate pick up, but my voice stayed steady. Did she mention which Chen family? Members getting married? Sophia glanced at her notes. Tyler Chen and Amanda Richardson. She emphasized that this is a very important social event, and they need everything to be perfect. I set down my coffee carefully. After 3 years of building Cascade into Portland's most sought-after venue, after establishing myself as someone who created flawless events for the city's most important families, my own family had come to me for help. They just didn't know it yet. "Tell Mrs. Chen I'll be right out to meet with her personally," I said. I took a moment to compose myself, checking my reflection in the office mirror. I was no longer the uncertain young woman in the navy dress, who'd spent an engagement party refilling water glasses. I was wearing a tailored black suit, my hair was professionally styled, and I carried myself with the confidence of someone who'd built something significant. Most importantly, I was about to have a conversation from a position of power, rather than a position of need. I walked into the main event space where my mother was standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the river view. She was elegantly dressed as always, but I could see the slight tension in her shoulders that meant she was stressed about something important. "Mrs. Chen," I said, extending my hand professionally. "I'm Maya Carter, the venue director for Cascade Event Center." She turned toward me with a polite smile, then froze. For a moment, confusion flickered across her face, as if she was trying to place someone who looked familiar but couldn't quite identify them. "I'm sorry," she said slowly. "Have we met before? You look." "I don't believe we've been formally introduced," I said smoothly. "But I understand you're planning a wedding. Reception for your son Tyler and his fiancée Amanda. Congratulations on the upcoming marriage." The confusion in her eyes was replaced by relief as she shifted into business mode. "Yes, thank you. We're looking for a venue that can handle a sophisticated event for about 200 guests. This is a very important celebration for our family, and we need everything to be absolutely perfect." I nodded professionally. Cascade specializes in creating exceptional experiences for discerning clients. We'd be honored to host such a significant celebration. Would you like me to show you around the space? For the next hour, I gave my mother the full tour of the venue I'd built from the ground up. I showed her the main event space with its stunning river views, the bridal suite with its private balcony, the cocktail area with its custom bar, the kitchen facilities that allowed us to coordinate with Portland's finest caterers. I walked her through our service offerings, our attention to detail, our track record of flawless events. She was impressed, asking thoughtful questions about logistics, pricing, and availability. At no point did she recognize that she was speaking with her own daughter, the same daughter she'd asked to coordinate kitchen details 3 years earlier. "This is exactly what we're looking for," she said finally. "The space is beautiful, and your reputation in the city is impeccable. We've heard wonderful things about Cascade Events Center." I felt a surge of satisfaction hearing those words. Cascade had earned its reputation through my work, my vision, my dedication to creating memorable experiences. The venue's success belonged to me in a way that family approval never had. "I'm glad you feel we'd be a good fit," I said. "For a wedding of this significance, I would personally oversee every detail of the planning and execution. Your son's wedding would receive our highest level of service." "That's reassuring," she said. "Tyler has always been destined for great things, and Amanda comes from a very prominent family. This wedding will be quite the social event." I nodded, maintaining my professional demeanor while noting that she still spoke about Tyler's destiny, as if it were the only one that mattered in the family. "I'll prepare a comprehensive proposal for you," I said. "It will include all service options, pricing tiers, and available dates. When would be a good time to follow up?" We scheduled a meeting for the following week, where she would bring Amanda and Tyler to see the space and finalize details. As she prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "I have to ask. Carter isn't a local name I recognize. Are you originally from Portland?" I smiled. "I grew up here, but I've built my career in hospitality rather than the traditional Portland business scene. Sometimes the best opportunities come from forging your own path." She nodded approvingly. "That's admirable. It's refreshing to meet a young woman who's created her own success." After she left, I sat in my office staring out at the river view, processing what had just happened. My mother had spent an hour praising my professional accomplishments, my attention to detail, my ability to create exceptional experiences, all without realizing she was talking to the daughter she'd always seen as a supporting player. The wedding consultation was scheduled for the following Thursday. Tyler and Amanda would see the venue I'd built, meet with the event director I'd become, and make their decision based on my reputation for excellence. They would have no idea they were hiring Maya Chen to plan the most important day of Tyler's life. Part of me wondered if I should reveal my identity immediately, end the charade before it went any further. But a larger part of me was curious to see how this would unfold. Would they recognize the skills they'd always dismissed? Would they understand that their supporting player had become the star of her own story? I had 1 week to decide how to handle the most important client meeting of my career. A meeting that would determine whether I'd be planning my brother's wedding as Maya Chen, the family helper, or as Maya Carter, the successful businesswoman, who happened to share their DNA. The choice would define not just the wedding, but the future of my relationship with the family that had never quite known how to see me. The week leading up to the family consultation passed in a blur of strategic planning and internal debate. I found myself rehearsing conversations, imagining different scenarios, trying to predict how Tyler and Amanda would react to the venue. That had become my professional masterpiece. Would they appreciate the attention to detail that went into every corner of Cascade? Would they understand that the woman presenting their options had built something extraordinary from nothing? I decided to maintain my professional identity as Maya Carter for the initial meeting. Not out of deception, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see how they would interact with me when they perceived me as an equal in the business world, rather than as the family member who handled practical matters. The experiment would reveal more about their character than any family dinner ever could. Thursday afternoon arrived with typical Portland drizzle, the kind of soft rain that made the city feel intimate and sophisticated. I dressed carefully, in a charcoal gray suit with subtle pinstripe details, paired with understated jewelry that suggested professional success without ostentation. When I looked in the mirror, I saw Maya Carter, successful venue director, not Maya Chen, overlooked daughter. The distinction felt important. Sophia announced their arrival at precisely 2 o'clock. Through my office window, I watched Tyler emerge from his Tesla Model S, straightening his jacket and checking his phone one final time before heading inside. He looked every bit the successful businessman our parents had groomed him to become. Amanda followed, elegant in a cream-colored coat, her engagement ring catching the lobby lighting as she gestured while speaking. My mother entered last, and I noticed she carried herself differently here than she did at family gatherings. At Cascade, she was the client, respectful of the professional environment and the expertise of the staff. It was a version of her I'd rarely seen. I gave them 5 minutes to settle in the reception area before making my entrance. Sophia had prepared a welcome setup with local artisanal coffee and small pastries from a bakery we partnered with regularly. When I walked into the main lobby, Tyler was examining the architectural details of the space, while Amanda and my mother discussed the river view. "Good afternoon," I said, approaching with confident strides. "I'm Maya Carter, venue director. Mrs. Chen, wonderful to see you again." Tyler turned first, extending his hand with the practiced charm that had always made him our parents' favorite. "Tyler Chen," he said. "This is my fiancée, Amanda Richardson." Amanda offered a warm smile. "We've heard incredible things about Cascade Events Center. The recommendations have been unanimous." I felt a small surge of pride. The recommendations they'd received were based on events I'd personally coordinated, relationships I'd built, and a reputation I'd earned through 3 years of flawless execution. Every positive word about Cascade reflected work I'd done without family support or recognition. "I'm delighted you're considering us for your celebration," I said. "A wedding of your caliber deserves a venue that understands the significance of the occasion." We began the tour in the main event space, where afternoon light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in a golden glow that photographers loved. I watched Amanda's face light up as she took in the view, the architectural details, the way the space felt both grand and intimate. "The capacity is flexible," I explained, gesturing toward different areas of the room. "We can accommodate anywhere from 150 to 250 guests, depending on your preferred layout. The space transforms beautifully for both ceremony and reception, or we can coordinate with outdoor venues for the ceremony and host the reception here." Tyler was studying the technical aspects, asking questions about sound systems, lighting capabilities, and vendor access. His questions were intelligent and thorough, the kind of detailed inquiry that suggested he took this decision seriously. It reminded me of the brother I'd known as a child, before family expectations had shaped him into someone who assumed his importance was inherent rather than earned. "What sets Cascade apart from other venues in the city?" Amanda asked as we moved toward the bridal suite. This was the question I'd been hoping for, the opportunity to explain what made my approach different from standard event planning. "We believe that exceptional events happen when every detail serves the larger emotional experience," I said. "Many venues focus on logistics or aesthetics, but we focus on creating moments that feel authentic to who you are as a couple. Every decision we make, from the flow of the evening to the selection of linens, supports the story you want to tell about your love and your future together." Amanda's expression softened. "That's exactly what we want. This isn't just a party. For us, it's the beginning of our marriage, and we want it to feel meaningful." I nodded, understanding the deeper need behind her words. "Tell me about your relationship. How did you meet? What do you love most about your time together? The more I understand about your connection, the better I can design an experience that reflects who you are." For the next 20 minutes, Tyler and Amanda shared their story. They'd met through mutual friends at a wine tasting event, bonded over their shared love of travel and architecture, and discovered they both valued family traditions while wanting to create new ones together. Tyler spoke about Amanda's creativity and intelligence with genuine admiration. Amanda talked about Tyler's ambition and kindness with obvious affection. Listening to them, I was reminded that Tyler was more than just the golden child who'd overshadowed my achievements. He was a person capable of real love and thoughtful partnership. The resentment I'd carried began to shift into something more complex, a recognition that family dynamics had shaped all of us in ways that weren't entirely our fault. Based on what you're sharing, I said, I would recommend a design approach that honors tradition while incorporating personal touches that reflect your individual personalities. Classic elegance with unexpected details that surprise and delight your guests. We continued through the venue, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the consultation. Removed from family dynamics, I could appreciate Tyler's thoughtful questions and Amanda's creative vision. They were engaged clients who cared about creating a meaningful experience, not just throwing an expensive party. In the catering kitchen, Tyler asked about our vendor relationships and quality control processes. My family has been in business for decades, he said. I understand that success depends on the people you work with and the systems you create to ensure consistency. Absolutely, I agreed. We've built relationships with Portland's finest caterers, but we also maintain strict standards for presentation, timing, and service. Every vendor who works a Cascade event knows they're representing not just their own business, but our commitment to excellence. My mother, who had been quietly observing throughout the tour, finally spoke up. Maya, your attention to detail is remarkable. How long have you been in the event industry? The question felt loaded with possibility. I could reveal everything in that moment, or continue the professional facade a little longer. I've been building my expertise for several years, I said carefully. I started by helping with family events and discovered I had an instinct for creating memorable experiences. The skills developed naturally from there. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the complete truth either. The complete truth was that I'd started by being assigned to kitchen duty at my brother's engagement party, then spent 3 years transforming that dismissal into professional mastery. It shows, Amanda said warmly. You clearly understand. What makes events special? We concluded the tour in my office, where I presented a comprehensive proposal I'd prepared specifically for their wedding. The folder contained sample menus, photography examples from previous events, timeline templates, and pricing options for different service levels. This is incredibly thorough, Tyler said, flipping through the materials. You've thought of details we hadn't even considered. That's my job, I replied. Your job is to enjoy your engagement and your wedding day. My job is to ensure that everything else happens seamlessly. Amanda studied the pricing sheet. These rates are competitive with other premium venues, but the service offerings are much more comprehensive. Why is that? Because we're not just renting you a space, I explained. We're providing complete event production. When you work with Cascade, you have access to my personal network of preferred vendors, my 3 years of experience managing high-profile events, and my commitment to ensuring your wedding exceeds your expectations. Tyler looked at Amanda, then at our mother. Some silent communication passed between them. We'd like to move forward, he said. What's the next step? I felt a moment of surreal satisfaction. Tyler Chen, the golden child who'd always been destined for success, was hiring Maya Carter to manage the most important event of his life. The irony was almost too perfect. I'll prepare a detailed contract for your review, I said. Once you've approved the terms, we'll schedule our first planning session to begin developing the specific details of your celebration. We shook hands professionally, and I walked them to the lobby. As they prepared to leave, Amanda turned back. Maya, I have to say, your approach to this is refreshing. You understand that this isn't just business for us. It's personal. That means everything. After they left, I remained in the lobby for several minutes, processing what had just happened. The consultation had gone better than I could have hoped. Not only had they chosen Cascade for their wedding, but they'd connected with my professional approach in a way that felt genuine and meaningful. But underneath the satisfaction was a growing complexity about the situation I'd created. Every day I delayed revealing my identity made the eventual truth more complicated. They weren't just clients anymore. Through our professional interaction, I was beginning to see them as people, rather than symbols of family favoritism. That evening, I called Marcus to discuss the booking. He was thrilled about landing such a high-profile local wedding, particularly one that would likely generate significant word-of-mouth business in Portland's social circles. "The Chen family has connections throughout the business community," he said. "A successful wedding for them could lead to dozens of corporate events and other family celebrations." "I know," I said. "That's part of what makes this opportunity significant." "You seem reserved about it," Marcus observed. "Usually you're more excited about landing prestige clients." I hesitated, then decided to share part of the truth. "I have a personal connection to this family. Nothing that affects my ability to do the job, but it adds some emotional complexity to the situation." Marcus, who'd become both mentor and friend over the years, understood immediately. Personal connections can make business relationships more challenging. "Do you want to assign this to another coordinator?" "No," I said without hesitation. "I want to handle this personally. I just need to navigate some complicated dynamics." Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into planning Tyler and Amanda's wedding with the same intensity I brought to every Cascade event, but with additional motivation that went beyond professional pride. This wedding would showcase everything. I'd learned about creating extraordinary experiences. It would demonstrate the skills my family had never recognized, the vision they'd never valued, and the success they'd never celebrated. I researched Amanda's Pinterest boards to understand her aesthetic preferences. I studied Tyler's social media to identify elements that would make the celebration feel personal to him. I spoke with mutual friends who'd attended other events they'd hosted, gathering information about their entertaining style and the experiences that mattered most to them. The planning process revealed details about my brother I'd never known. He was more thoughtful about relationships than I'd realized, more interested in meaningful traditions than impressive displays. Amanda brought out qualities in him that I remembered from our childhood, before family business pressure had made him more concerned with appearances than authentic connection. 3 weeks after the initial consultation, we held our first detailed planning meeting. Tyler and Amanda arrived with notebooks full of ideas, questions, and Pinterest screenshots. Amanda had created a vision board that perfectly captured the elegant but warm atmosphere she wanted for their celebration. "I love how you're thinking about this," I told them as we reviewed their materials. "You're focusing on the experience. You want to create for your guests, not just the way you want things to look. That's the foundation of truly memorable events." We spent 3 hours discussing every aspect of the wedding, from the ceremony timeline to the late-night snack service. Tyler asked detailed questions about vendor coordination and backup plans. Amanda wanted to understand how we'd create different energy levels throughout the evening, keeping guests engaged from cocktail hour through dancing. "I have one specific request," Amanda said toward the end of our meeting. "Tyler's family is very important to him, and I want to make sure they feel honored throughout the celebration. Is there a way to incorporate family traditions or acknowledgments into the evening?" I felt my heart rate increase slightly. "Of course. Can you tell me more about the family traditions that matter most to Tyler?" Tyler smiled. "My parents immigrated to Portland 30 years ago and built their business from nothing. Family success has always been about honoring their sacrifice and continuing their legacy. Amanda and I want to acknowledge that during the reception." "That's beautiful," I said, meaning it sincerely. "We can create several moments throughout the evening that honor your parents' journey and celebrate the foundation they've built for your generation. As we discussed ways to honor David and Linda Chen's contributions to their family's success, I felt the complexity of my situation intensify. They were talking about celebrating the same parents who dismissed my ambitions and overlooked my potential. Yet seeing their love and respect for our parents reminded me that family relationships contain multitudes, that people can be simultaneously disappointing and worthy of honor. "There's one more thing," Tyler said as we wrapped up the meeting. "My sister has been somewhat distant from the family in recent years. We're hoping she'll attend the wedding, but we're not sure. If she does come, we want to make sure she feels included and welcomed." My breath caught. "Tell me about your sister." "Maya," Amanda said warmly. "She's brilliant and talented, but she's always been independent. She's building her own career, path, and I think she sometimes feels overshadowed by family expectations for Tyler. I really hope she'll be there." Tyler nodded. "Maya has always been the most capable person in our family, but she's also the most private. I worry that we haven't done enough to show her how much she means to us." I stared at them, feeling the weight of revelations I hadn't expected. Tyler was worried about me feeling overshadowed. Amanda thought I was brilliant and talented. They wanted to make sure I felt included and welcomed at their wedding. "I'm sure your sister knows how much you care about her," I managed to say. "I hope so," Tyler said quietly. "Sometimes I think we've taken her for granted because she's always been so self-sufficient. She never needed the same kind of support I did, so we assumed she didn't want it. But independence and not wanting support aren't the same thing." The conversation shifted to other topics, but Tyler's words stayed with me long after they left. The narrative I'd built about being overlooked and undervalued was true, but it was also incomplete. Tyler and Amanda's perspective revealed family dynamics I hadn't fully understood, motivations I hadn't considered, and regrets I hadn't known existed. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and Tyler's words echoing in my mind. She never needed the same kind of support I did, so we assumed she didn't want it. The observation was both perceptive and heartbreaking. I had been self-sufficient, partly by choice and partly by necessity. But self-sufficiency and not needing support weren't the same thing. I realized that my family's failure to recognize my achievements might have been less about dismissal and more about misunderstanding. They'd seen my independence as proof that I didn't need encouragement, when in fact it had been my response to not receiving it. The revelation didn't excuse years of being treated as a supporting player in my own family's story. But it complicated the simple narrative of neglect and vindication that I'd been carrying. People and relationships were more complex than the stories we told ourselves about them. 2 months into wedding planning, Cascade Events Center received an inquiry that would accelerate everything. Amanda's father, who'd been impressed by our professionalism during his daughter's wedding planning, recommended us to his law firm for their annual gala. The event would host 400 guests, including many of Portland's most influential business leaders. This could be the booking that establishes Cascade as the premier corporate venue in the city, Marcus told me during our weekly planning meeting. The Richardson firm has connections throughout the legal and business community. Success with their gala could generate bookings for the next 2 years. The corporate gala was scheduled for May, 1 month before Tyler and Amanda's wedding. It would be a high-stakes opportunity to demonstrate Cascade's capabilities to an audience that could transform our business trajectory. I spent weeks preparing for the Richardson Firm Gala, creating an experience that would showcase every aspect of our service excellence. The event required coordination with 12 different vendors, management of complex dietary restrictions for 400 guests, and flawless execution of a program that included dinner, awards presentations, and networking opportunities. The night of the gala, everything aligned perfectly. Service was seamless, the food was extraordinary, and the atmosphere struck the ideal balance between professional sophistication and welcoming warmth. Guests complimented every detail, from the innovative cocktail selections to the thoughtful seating arrangements that facilitated meaningful business connections. Near the end of the evening, Amanda's father approached me personally. "Maya, this has been an exceptional event. You've exceeded every expectation we had." "Thank you, Mr. Richardson. It's been a pleasure to work with your team. I want you to know that several attendees have already asked for your contact information. I think you'll be hearing from new clients very soon." He was right. Within a week of the gala, Cascade had received inquiries for 6 corporate events, 3 private celebrations, and 2 additional weddings. Our booking calendar filled rapidly, and our reputation in Portland's business community solidified. The success felt particularly meaningful because it was entirely my own. These clients were choosing Cascade based on demonstrated excellence, not family connections or inherited advantages. Every booking represented validation of the skills I'd developed, the vision I'd implemented, and the business I'd built. But the professional triumph also intensified the personal complexity of my situation with Tyler and Amanda's wedding. Their celebration was now just 1 month away, and I still hadn't revealed my identity. Every planning meeting felt more surreal, every conversation more loaded with unspoken truth. The final month of wedding planning passed quickly, filled with vendor confirmations, timeline refinements, and last-minute adjustments that were normal for any significant celebration. Tyler and Amanda had become more than clients. Through months of planning conversations, they'd become people I genuinely respected and wanted to succeed. Amanda's vision for the wedding had evolved into something both elegant and personal, incorporating family traditions while reflecting her and Tyler's individual style. Tyler's attention to logistical details had ensured that every aspect of the celebration was thoroughly planned and professionally coordinated. 2 weeks before the wedding, during our final major planning meeting, Amanda brought up the subject I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. "Maya, I need to ask about something sensitive," she said. "Tyler's sister still hasn't responded to the wedding invitation. We're worried she might not attend." Tyler's expression was troubled. "Maya, his sister, has always been independent, but this feels different. We've tried reaching out, but she hasn't been returning calls or responding to messages." I felt the weight of the moment, the convergence of professional obligation and personal revelation that had been building for months. "Have you considered that she might be dealing with something significant in her own life?" I asked carefully. "Sometimes people withdraw when they're processing major changes or challenges." "That's what worries me," Tyler said. "If she's going through something difficult, I want to be there for her. But I don't know how to reach her." Amanda nodded. "I've only met Maya a few times, but she's always seemed incredibly capable and strong. Maybe she's used to handling things on her own." "She is," Tyler agreed. "But capable people need support too, even when they don't. Ask for it." The conversation continued, but I found myself increasingly unable to focus on the logistics we were discussing. Tyler and Amanda's concern for Maya Chen, for me, was genuine and touching. They weren't dismissing my absence or assuming indifference. They were worried about my well-being and regretting their inability to provide support. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. It was time to stop being Maya Carter and Maya Chen simultaneously. The wedding was 10 days away, and my family deserved to know who had been planning the most important celebration of Tyler's life. But first, I needed to ensure that everything was perfect. Whatever happened after I revealed my identity, Tyler and Amanda's wedding would be flawless. They had trusted Maya Carter with their most important day, and Maya Carter would deliver an unforgettable celebration. The week leading up to the wedding was a symphony of controlled chaos and precise coordination. Final vendor meetings, dress rehearsals, timeline confirmations, and countless small details that would ensure seamless execution. I personally inspected every element that would contribute to Tyler and Amanda's celebration. from the linens to the lighting to the late-night snack service. 3 days before the wedding, I received a call that would accelerate my timeline for revelation. "Maya," Sophia said, "Mrs. Chen is here to see you. She says it's about a last-minute addition to the wedding arrangements." My mother was waiting, in the reception area, looking uncharacteristically flustered. When I approached, she stood quickly. "Maya, Ms. Carter, I'm sorry to bother you so close to the wedding, but we have a situation I'm hoping you can help with." "Of course. What can I do?" She took a deep breath. "Tyler's sister hasn't responded to the wedding invitation, and we're all worried about her. Tyler is heartbroken at the thought of getting married without Maya there, but we don't know how to reach her." I felt the moment crystallizing around us, the perfect opportunity to end the charade and reveal the truth. "Mrs. Chen," I said gently, "I think I can help you with that situation." "Really? Do you know Maya?" I looked at my mother. This woman who had raised me, dismissed me, and was now unknowingly asking me to solve the problem of my own absence from my brother's wedding. "Yes," I said quietly. "I know Maya very well." The silence that followed my words stretched between us like a bridge neither of us was quite ready to cross. My mother's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally something that looked like wonder mixed with shock. "Maya," she whispered, as if saying my name too loudly might make me disappear again. "Is that really you?" I nodded, feeling 3 years of carefully constructed professional distance collapse in an instant. "Hello, Mom." She stared at me for a long moment, taking in the tailored suit, the confident posture, the office that clearly belonged to someone who had built something significant. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "You're Maya Carter. You're the venue director. You've been planning Tyler's wedding." "I am, and I have been." "But how? When? I don't understand." She sank into one of the reception area chairs as if her legs could no longer support her. "How long have you been here doing this?" 3 years, I said, sitting across from her. "I started working in events shortly after Tyler's engagement." "Party. This venue, this business, this reputation you've heard about, I built it." The color drained from her face as the implications hit her. "Tyler's engagement party, when you helped with the catering coordination. How when you asked me to work in the kitchen while everyone else celebrated." The words came out more sharply than I'd intended, carrying 3 years of suppressed hurt. She flinched. "Maya, I never meant—" "I know what you meant, Mom. You meant that Tyler's future mattered more than mine, that his success was worth investing in, and mine was worth sacrificing for his benefit. You meant that some people are destined for greatness, and others are meant to support that greatness from behind the scenes." Tears formed in her eyes. "That's not what I meant at all." "Then what did you mean?" I asked, surprised by how much I genuinely wanted to understand. "Help me make sense of how you could ask your daughter to serve drinks at her brother's engagement party, instead of celebrating with the family." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I meant that you were the only one I could trust to handle something important. Tyler was so nervous about that party, about making a good impression on Amanda's family. Your father was stressed about the business implications of their engagement. Everyone was on edge, and then the event coordinator had to leave." She looked up at me. "You were always the one who could fix things, Maya. When there was a crisis, when something needed to be done right, we called on you because we knew you could handle it. I thought I was asking for help from the most capable person in the room. But you never asked if I wanted to help. You just assumed I would." "You're right," she said quietly. "I assumed because you were always so competent, so independent. You never seemed to need the same kind of support Tyler did, so I thought you didn't want it." I felt something shift inside me, a recognition that we'd been operating from completely different understandings of the same events. Mom, independence and not needing support aren't the same thing. I was independent because I had to be, not because I preferred it. I know that now, she said, tears spilling over. I've known it for 3 years, but I didn't know how to fix it. When you left, when you didn't come home, I realized how badly I'd misunderstood the situation. But by then, you were gone, and I didn't know how to reach you. You could have tried harder to find me. We did try. We hired a private investigator. We called every contact we could think of, but Maya Chen had simply disappeared. We never thought to look for Maya Carter. The revelation surprised me. They had looked for me, just not in the places where I was building my new life. Why didn't you change back to your real name once you were established? She asked. It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself many times over the past 3 years. At first, it was practical. I was starting over and I wanted a clean slate. But as time went on, it became something else. Maya Carter was the version of me that people respected professionally. Maya Carter got recognition for her ideas and abilities. Maya Carter was seen as someone whose opinions mattered. And Maya Chen wasn't? I considered the question honestly. Maya Chen was the family helper. Maya Chen was reliable and useful, but not visionary. Maya Chen's ideas were dismissed as impractical, and her achievements were minimized as luck or circumstance. My mother absorbed this, and I could see her mentally reviewing years of family interactions through this new lens. Tyler is going to be devastated, she said finally. Not because you changed your name or built this business, but because he spent 3 years thinking his sister didn't want to be part of his life. And now he's going to find out his sister has been planning his wedding without telling him. Why didn't you tell us? When we first came here, when you realized who we were, why didn't you say something? It was the question I'd been dreading, partly because I wasn't entirely sure of the answer myself. Curiosity, I suppose. I wanted to see how you would treat Maya Carter versus how you'd always treated Maya Chen. I wanted to understand if the problem was with me or with how you saw me. And what did you discover? I thought about the months of wedding planning, the respect they'd shown for my professional opinions, the way Tyler and Amanda had valued my insights and trusted my expertise. I discovered that you're capable of seeing me as competent and valuable when you're not thinking of me as your daughter. As Maya Carter, my ideas matter. My skills are impressive. My success is worthy of respect. She winced. As Maya Chen, we took all of that for granted. Yes. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We failed you in ways I'm only beginning to understand. The apology was more than I'd expected, and it carried a sincerity that reached something deep inside me that I'd thought was permanently closed off. What happens now? I asked. The wedding is in 3 days. Tyler and Amanda have no idea that Maya Carter is Maya Chen. How do we handle this? What do you want to happen? The question surprised me with its simplicity and its complexity. What did I want? I want Tyler's wedding to be perfect, I said without hesitation. Whatever else happens, whatever complications arise from this revelation, Tyler and Amanda deserve the celebration we've planned. They've trusted me with the most important day of their lives, and I won't let personal drama interfere with that. And after the wedding? I don't know. That depends partly on how Tyler and Amanda react to finding out the truth. My mother stood up slowly. When will you tell them? I think Tyler deserves to know before the wedding, not during or after. He should have the choice about whether he wants Maya Chen or Maya Carter managing his celebration. He'll want his sister there, she said with certainty. He's been heartbroken thinking you might miss his wedding. We'll see. She moved toward the door, then turned back. Maya, for what it's worth, I'm incredibly proud of what you've built here. This business, this reputation, This success, it's extraordinary. I just wish I'd been supporting you through it instead of discovering it by accident." After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the river and trying to process the conversation that had just upended 3 years of carefully maintained emotional distance. My mother's apology felt genuine, and her explanation for past behavior made sense in a way that complicated my narrative of intentional dismissal. But understanding her motivations didn't erase the impact of her actions. I'd still spent years feeling invisible in my own family. I'd still left home with $100 and a broken heart. I'd still built everything I had without their support or encouragement. The difference was that now I understood their perspective had been shaped by misunderstanding rather than malice. They'd seen my independence as preference rather than necessity. They'd interpreted my competence as not needing support rather than not receiving it. I called Marcus to update him on the situation. He listened without interruption as I explained the family connection and the complexity it created for the upcoming wedding. "So your brother's wedding is being planned by his sister, but he doesn't know his sister is planning his wedding," Marcus summarized. "That's either the most beautiful coincidence or the most complicated family drama I've ever heard." "Both, I think." "What's your instinct about how to handle it?" "I need to tell Tyler and Amanda before the wedding. They deserve to know who they're trusting with their celebration. And if they react badly, if they want to cancel or make changes, then we'll handle it professionally, but I don't think they will." The Tyler and Amanda I've gotten to know over these months of planning aren't the type of people who would let family complexity interfere with doing what's right. "You've changed your mind about them." I considered this. I've gotten to know them as people rather than as symbols of family favoritism. It's harder to resent people when you understand who they actually are. Marcus chuckled. "That's very mature of you." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised by your maturity. I'm impressed by your capacity for forgiveness. Not everyone could move past years of feeling overlooked. I'm not sure I have moved past it entirely, but I've moved past needing them to validate my worth. I know what I've accomplished. I know what I'm capable of. Their recognition is nice to have, but it's not necessary for my sense of self." That evening, I called Tyler's cell phone directly. He answered on the second ring. "Tyler, this is Maya Carter from Cascade Events Center. Do you have a few minutes?" "To talk?" "Of course. Is everything okay with the wedding plans?" "Everything is fine with the logistics. But there's something personal I need to discuss with you before Saturday. Could you and Amanda meet with me tomorrow evening? There's something important I need to tell you both." "You're making me nervous," he said with a slight laugh. "Is this about the final headcount? Because we're still waiting on a few RSVPs." "It's not about the headcount, it's about me, actually. About my connection to your family." There was a pause. "What kind of connection?" "It's better if I explain in person. Can you meet me at Cascade tomorrow at 7? "Yes, of course. Maya, you're starting to worry me." "Don't worry. I promise everything will make sense tomorrow." After hanging up, I spent the evening preparing for a conversation that would either strengthen the relationships I'd built or destroy them entirely. I rehearsed different ways to explain the situation, trying to find words that would convey the complexity of my motivations without sounding manipulative or vindictive. The next evening, Tyler and Amanda arrived precisely at 7, both looking concerned and curious. I'd prepared the conference room with coffee and light refreshments, treating this like the important business meeting it was, despite its personal implications. "Thank you both for coming," I said as we settled around the table. "What I need to tell you is going to be surprising, and I want you to know that my primary concern is ensuring your wedding is everything you've planned for it to be." Tyler leaned forward. "Maya, you're scaring us. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "My name isn't actually Maya Carter. Well, it is legally now, but I was born Maya Chen." The silence that followed was profound. I watched their faces as the implications processed, seeing confusion give way to recognition. Maya Chen, Amanda repeated slowly. As in Tyler's sister, Maya Chen? Yes. Tyler stared at me as if I were a mirage that might disappear if he blinked. You're my sister. You're Maya. My Maya. I'm your sister, yes. But how is this possible? When? Why didn't you tell us? I spent the next hour explaining everything. The engagement party that had catalyzed my departure, the years of building my career in the event industry, the decision to maintain my professional identity when they became clients, and the growing complexity of planning their wedding while keeping my identity secret. Tyler listened without interrupting, his expression cycling through shock, hurt, confusion, and something that looked like admiration. Amanda held his hand throughout my explanation, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly just absorbing the magnitude of the revelation. When I finished, Tyler was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. You've been planning my wedding for months. You've listened to me talk about how worried I was about my sister not being there. You've heard me express regret about our relationship, and you never said anything. I wanted to see how you would treat Maya Carter versus how you'd always treated Maya Chen. And what did you discover? That you're capable of respecting my opinions and valuing my expertise when you don't see me as your little sister who handles practical matters. Tyler winced. Is that really how we treated you? Not intentionally, I don't think, but yes. Amanda spoke for the first time in several minutes. Tyler, remember what you said about Maya being the most capable person in your family, but also the most underappreciated? You were right. Tyler nodded slowly. I was right, but I was also part of the problem. We all were, I said. Family dynamics are complicated. Everyone plays a role in maintaining patterns that don't serve anyone well. Maya, Tyler said, using my first name for the first time since learning the truth. I owe you an enormous apology. We all do. We took your competence for granted and interpreted your independence as not wanting support. We let you carry responsibilities without giving you recognition. We celebrated my achievements while minimizing yours. And we lost 3 years of having you in our lives because we were too blind to see what we were doing wrong, Amanda added. I felt tears threatening for the first time in the conversation. I wasn't entirely innocent in this situation. I could have communicated better about what I needed. I could have tried harder to maintain relationships instead of disappearing completely. You shouldn't have had to ask your family to see your worth, Tyler said firmly. That should have been automatic. Well, you see it now. I do. We do? He looked around the conference room, taking in the professional environment I'd created. Maya, this is incredible. This business, this reputation, everything you've accomplished, it's extraordinary. Thank you. And you did it all, without any support from us. I did it because I had to, but also because I wanted to prove to myself that I could. Amanda leaned forward. What does this mean for the wedding? Do you still want to coordinate it now that we know the truth? That depends on whether you still want me to. I understand if this revelation changes things for you. Tyler shook his head immediately. Maya, you've planned the perfect wedding for us. You've understood what we wanted better than we understood it ourselves. You've anticipated our needs and created something beautiful. Why would we want anyone else to coordinate our celebration? Because now it's personal instead of professional. It was always personal, Amanda said. We just didn't realize how personal. Tyler stood up and walked around the table to where I was sitting. Maya, I would be honored to have my sister coordinate my wedding. Not because you're family, but because you're the best event coordinator in Portland and you've created something perfect for Amanda and me. I stood up to face him. Tyler, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person who left home 3 years ago. I've changed. I've grown. I've become someone who doesn't need family approval to feel worthy of success. I can see that. And I'm proud of who you've become, even though I wish I'd been part of your journey getting there. And I need you to understand that our relationship moving forward will be different. I'm not the family helper anymore. I'm not the person who automatically says yes to whatever's asked of her. I'm someone with my own priorities, my own boundaries, and my own definition of success. I wouldn't want it any other way, he said, and pulled me into a hug that felt both familiar and completely new. Amanda joined us, creating a circle of 3 people who were about to become family in a way that honored everyone's individual worth. So, I said when we separated, do you want to review the final timeline for Saturday? Or do you trust Maya Carter to handle the details? Tyler laughed, the first genuinely relaxed sound he'd made all evening. I trust my sister to create the perfect wedding. Whether she's Maya Carter or Maya Chen, she's extraordinary at what she does. Good answer, Amanda said, squeezing his arm. Now, Maya, there's one more thing we need to discuss. What's that? You're not coordinating this wedding as Maya Carter, professional event planner. You're coordinating it as Maya Chen, Tyler's sister, which means you're not working during the reception. You're celebrating with us. I started to protest. But someone needs to manage the timeline, coordinate with vendors. That's what assistant coordinators are for, Tyler interrupted. You've trained your staff well. Let them handle the execution while you enjoy the party. I don't know if I remember how to be a wedding guest instead of a wedding coordinator. Then it's time to learn, Amanda said with a smile. Because you're family, and family celebrates together. Us looking at them, I realized that this was what I'd been searching for without knowing it. Not just recognition for my achievements, but inclusion in the joy those achievements had helped create. Not just professional respect, but personal connection that honored both my capabilities and my relationships. The wedding was 2 days away, and for the first time in 3 years, I would attend a family celebration as Maya Chen, beloved sister, rather than as hired help or invisible support staff. The thought was both terrifying and wonderful, like stepping into a version of myself I'd never been allowed to be. The morning of Tyler's wedding dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of golden Portland sunshine that made everything look like it belonged in a magazine. I arrived at Cascade Events Center at 6 a.m, 3 hours before the vendor teams would begin setup, wanting to walk through the space one final time before it transformed into the celebration I'd spent months planning. The main event hall looked different in the early morning light, empty and full of potential. In a few hours, it would become the backdrop for Tyler and Amanda's new beginning. But for now, it was just me and the space I'd designed, the vision I'd brought to life through countless decisions about lighting, layout, and atmosphere. Sophia arrived shortly after 7, carrying coffee and the detailed timeline that would govern every moment of the day. She'd been my right hand throughout the planning process, and today she would be my proxy for vendor coordination while I attempted to be a guest at my own brother's wedding. "How are you feeling about today?" she asked as we reviewed the schedule one final time. "Nervous," I admitted. "Not about the event logistics. I trust our team completely. But about navigating the family dynamics while everything unfolds. It's going to be strange, being a guest instead of the coordinator." I've never attended a wedding as the bride's sister-in-law and the event planner simultaneously. There's no protocol for this situation. Sophia laughed. "You'll figure it out. You always do." By 8 o'clock, the vendor teams began arriving in carefully orchestrated waves. The florists came first, transforming the space with arrangements that incorporated Amanda's vision of elegant simplicity with unexpected touches of whimsy. The lighting technicians followed, adjusting the carefully programmed system that would shift the room's atmosphere from ceremony intimacy to reception celebration. I found myself torn between my instinct to oversee every detail and my promise to Tyler and Amanda that I would trust my team to execute while I focused on being present as family. It was harder than I'd anticipated to step back and let others manage the vision I'd created. Rachel, my lead coordinator, noticed my struggle. "Maya, you need to go get ready. The bride will be arriving for hair and makeup in an hour, and you promised you'd be there as her sister-in-law, not as our boss." She was right. Amanda had specifically requested that I be part of the bridal party preparation, a gesture that meant more to me than she probably realized. For the first time in years, I was being included in a family celebration, not because of what I could contribute practically, but because of who I was personally. I drove home to change into the dress I'd chosen for the wedding, a deep burgundy, silk that complemented Amanda's color palette while being appropriately elegant for my dual role as family member and venue owner. Looking in the mirror, I saw Maya Chen preparing for her brother's wedding, not Maya Carter managing a client event. The bridal suite at Cascade had been transformed into a serene preparation space with soft music, abundant natural light, and enough room for Amanda, her mother, her sister, and now me to get ready together. When I arrived, Amanda was having her hair styled while her mother and sister discussed last-minute details about the ceremony timeline. "Maya," Amanda's face lit up when she saw me. "I'm so glad you're here. Come sit with us." It felt surreal to be welcomed into this intimate pre-wedding ritual. I'd coordinated dozens of bridal preparations, but always from the outside, managing logistics while families shared private moments. Being included felt both wonderful and overwhelming. Amanda's mother, Mrs. Richardson, approached me with a warm smile. "Maya, I want to thank you for everything you've done to make this day perfect. But more than that, I want to thank you for making Amanda so happy. She's told me how much it means to her to have Tyler's sister involved in planning their celebration. It's meant a lot to me too," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. Amanda's sister Emma looked up from where she was organizing bouquets. "Amanda's been talking about you for months. She was so excited when she found out Tyler's mysterious absent sister was actually the brilliant event planner who was creating their perfect wedding." "It's been quite a revelation for all of us," I said with a laugh. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of hairstyling, makeup application, and the kind of easy conversation that happens when women gather to prepare for an important celebration. I found myself relaxing into the role of sister-in-law in a way I hadn't expected to be able to do. Amanda looked radiant in her wedding dress, a classic A-line gown with delicate beading that caught the light beautifully. As her mother fastened the final buttons, Amanda turned to me. "Maya, I have something for you." She reached into a small gift box and pulled out a delicate bracelet. This was my grandmother's. She always said it should be worn by someone who brings joy to family celebrations. I can't think of anyone who's brought more joy to our celebration than you. I felt tears threatening as she fastened the bracelet around my wrist. "Amanda, this is too generous." "No, it's exactly right. You've given us the perfect wedding, but more than that, you've given Tyler his sister back. That's worth more than any piece of jewelry." 20 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, I excused myself to check on the final preparations. Walking through the venue I'd created, seeing the vision I'd developed brought to life exactly as I'd imagined it, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with anticipation. The ceremony space was perfect. Rows of elegant chairs faced an altar area decorated with flowing fabric and seasonal flowers that complemented the river view beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The lighting created an intimate atmosphere despite the grand scale of the room. Every detail reflected Amanda and Tyler's personalities while maintaining the sophisticated elegance they'd requested. Rachel appeared at my side. "Everything is ready. The musicians are in position, the officiant has arrived, and the groom is as nervous as every groom I've ever worked with." "How nervous?" "He asked 3 times if his sister was definitely going to be there. I smiled. His sister is definitely going to be there. Good, because I think he needs to see you in the audience to believe this is all really happening. As guests began arriving, I positioned myself near the entrance to observe the crowd Tyler and Amanda had assembled to celebrate their marriage. It was an impressive gathering. Family members, childhood friends, college roommates, business associates, and community leaders who'd become personal friends over the years. I recognized many faces from Portland's social and business circles, people who'd attended events at Cascade without knowing the venue director was Tyler Chen's sister. Seeing them in this context, as guests at my brother's wedding rather than clients at my business, created yet another layer of surreal complexity to the day. My parents arrived 15 minutes before the ceremony, both looking elegant and nervous. My father wore his best suit and the expression he got when he was trying to process unexpected developments. My mother looked beautiful but anxious, glancing around as if searching for something or someone. When she spotted me near the back of the ceremony space, her face transformed with relief and joy. She approached quickly, followed by my father. "Maya, sweetheart, you look absolutely beautiful," she said, embracing me warmly. My father's hug was longer and tighter than usual. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, "for everything you've built and for being here today." "I wouldn't miss Tyler's wedding," I said simply. "We weren't sure," my mother admitted. "Even after yesterday's conversation, we weren't sure you'd actually be here." "I'm here as Tyler's sister and as Amanda's new family member. This day is about them, and I want to celebrate their happiness." The processional music began, signaling that the ceremony was about to start. I found my seat in the second row, right behind Tyler's parents, in the spot traditionally reserved for the groom's immediate family. It was the first time in years that I'd sat in a place of honor at a family event. Tyler entered from a side door, accompanied by his best man and two groomsmen. He looked handsome and nervous, repeatedly glancing toward the back of the room where the bridal party would make their entrance. But first, his eyes found mine in the audience, and his entire demeanor relaxed. He smiled and nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement and gratitude that needed no words. The bridal processional was flawless. Amanda's bridesmaids moved down the aisle with perfect timing. The flower girl scattered petals with enthusiastic precision. And then Amanda appeared with her father, looking radiant and confident. But what struck me most was Tyler's reaction when he saw his bride. His nervous energy transformed into pure joy, and the love on his face was so genuine and overwhelming that I felt tears gathering in my eyes. Whatever complicated history our family carried, Tyler's happiness in this moment was uncomplicated and beautiful. The ceremony itself was everything Amanda and Tyler had envisioned. The officiant, a family friend who'd known Tyler since childhood, spoke about love that grows stronger through challenges and partnership that honors individual strengths while building shared dreams. The vows they'd written were personal and heartfelt, bringing tears to half the audience and smiles to everyone. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the applause was thunderous. Tyler and Amanda's joy was infectious, spreading through the gathered crowd like sunlight breaking through clouds. As they walked back down the aisle together, Tyler caught my eye again and mouthed, "Thank you," a message that encompassed both the wedding I'd planned and the sister who'd chosen to be present for his happiness. The cocktail hour began immediately. After the ceremony, as guests moved from the ceremony space to the adjacent area where servers circulated with signature cocktails and carefully selected appetizers. I'd designed this portion of the evening to encourage mingling while giving the photographer time to capture formal portraits with the wedding party. For the first time all day, I found myself uncertain about my role. As Maya Carter, I would have been coordinating with vendors, ensuring smooth transitions, and managing the timeline. As Maya Chen, I was supposed to be socializing with family and friends, celebrating my brother's marriage. The uncertainty resolved itself when Amanda's sister Emma approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "You look like you need this," she said, offering me a glass. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who understands the challenge of being in 2 places at once. I'm a teacher, so I spend every school event trying to be both educator and parent. It's impossible to fully succeed at either role. How do you manage it?" I remind myself that some situations are more important than perfect role execution. Today, being Tyler's sister matters more than being the flawless event coordinator. She was right, but old habits were hard to break. When I noticed a slight delay in the appetizer service, my instinct was to intervene. Instead, I forced myself to trust Rachel and my team to handle the situation, while I focused on the conversations happening around me. Over the next hour, I reconnected with extended family members I hadn't seen in 3 years, met Amanda's relatives who'd traveled from across the country for the wedding, and was introduced to Tyler's friends as the sister we've heard so much about. Each conversation felt like a small step toward reclaiming my place in my brother's life. One of Tyler's college roommates approached me with a grin. "You're the famous Maya. Tyler talks about you constantly, but we were starting to think you were fictional since you never showed up to anything." "I've been building my career," I said simply. "Sometimes that requires making difficult choices about how to spend your time." "Well, he's going to be thrilled that you're here. He was worried you might not make it. I wouldn't miss this." "Good, because he's been bragging about your event planning business to anyone who will listen. He's incredibly proud of what you've accomplished." The comment surprised me. Tyler had been talking about my business, bragging about my accomplishments. As if summoned by my thoughts, Tyler appeared at my side during a brief break from photographs. "Maya, I need to steal you for a minute," he said, guiding me toward a quiet corner of the cocktail area. "Is everything okay? Do you need me to coordinate something?" "No, everything is perfect. Better than perfect." He paused, looking uncharacteristically serious. "I need to tell you something before we go into the reception." "What is it?" "I've been talking to people today, family, friends, Amanda's relatives, and I keep hearing the same thing. Everyone is amazed by this wedding. They're calling it the most beautiful, well-coordinated celebration they've ever attended." "Your guests are being generous." "No, they're being honest. Maya, you've created something extraordinary here. This isn't just a successful event, it's art. It's a perfect translation of who Amanda and I are into a celebration that honors our love while making everyone feel welcome and valued." I felt a flush of pride at his words. That was the goal. But here's what I realized today. You did all of this while carrying the hurt of feeling unappreciated by our family. You planned the perfect wedding for the brother who'd been part of making you feel invisible. That level of grace and professionalism is remarkable. Tyler, let me finish. I want everyone to know that my sister created this celebration. Not just Maya Carter, the event planner, but Maya Chen, the family member who chose love over resentment. I want to acknowledge what you've done, both professionally and personally. You don't need to make a public statement. Yes, I do. For 3 years, you've gotten recognition for your work from everyone except the people who should have been your biggest supporters. That changes today. Before I could respond, he was walking toward the microphone that had been set up for announcements during the cocktail hour. "Excuse me, everyone." Tyler's voice carried across the space, drawing the attention of all 200 guests. "I want to take a moment before we move into dinner to share something important." The crowd quieted, turning toward where he stood with Amanda beside him. Most of you know that Amanda and I have been planning this wedding for almost a year. What you might not know is that every detail of this incredible celebration was designed and coordinated by someone very special to us. My heart began racing as I realized what he was about to do. Cascade Events Center isn't just Portland's premier venue. It's a business built and owned by my sister, Maya Chen. Every element of today's celebration, from the ceremony design to the menu selection to the flawless coordination you've witnessed, reflects her vision, her expertise, and her commitment to creating unforgettable experiences. The crowd murmured with surprise and interest, heads turning to locate me in the audience. But more than that, Tyler continued, Maya chose to take on our wedding despite complicated family history that would have justified her walking away. She chose to give us the perfect celebration, even when we hadn't always given her the recognition she deserved. Amanda took the microphone. Maya, you've given us so much more than a beautiful wedding. You've shown us what grace looks like, what forgiveness looks like, and what it means to choose love over hurt. We're honored to have you as our event coordinator, but we're even more honored to have you as family. The applause was immediate and sustained, with many guests turning to smile at me where I stood at the back of the space. I felt overwhelmed by the public acknowledgement, the recognition I'd craved for years finally given freely and generously. Tyler gestured for me to join them at the front of the room. Walking toward the microphone felt like walking toward a version of myself I'd never been allowed to be. The accomplished daughter, the respected sister, the family member whose contributions were celebrated rather than taken for granted. Thank you, I said when the applause died down. Planning Tyler and Amanda's wedding has been one of the most meaningful projects of my career. Not because of the scale or the budget, but because it gave me the opportunity to create something beautiful for people I love. I looked at Tyler and Amanda, then at my parents in the audience. Family relationships are complicated, and forgiveness is a process, not an event. But love is also a choice, and today we're all choosing to celebrate love in its many forms: romantic, love, family love, and the love that builds community among all of us gathered here. The applause that followed felt different from professional recognition I'd received for other events. This was personal acknowledgement from people who mattered. To me, recognition that encompassed both my professional skills and my personal character. As guests began moving toward the reception space for dinner, I was approached by dozens of people offering congratulations, asking for business cards, and expressing amazement at learning the family connection behind the evening's success. But the moment that meant the most came when my father appeared beside me. Maya, he said quietly, I owe you an apology that's 3 years overdue. Dad? No, let me say this. I've watched you work today, seen how you've managed this celebration while navigating complicated emotions, and I'm in awe of the woman you've become. You've built something remarkable, and you've done it with integrity and grace that makes me proud to be your father. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than he could know. But I'm also ashamed that you had to build it alone. We should have been supporting you, celebrating your achievements and encouraging your dreams. Instead, we took your strength for granted and left you to create your own path without our help. I'm stronger because I had to do it alone. You shouldn't have had to be that strong, he said firmly. Family is supposed to make you stronger, not require you to be strong in spite of them. The reception that followed was everything I'd envisioned when Amanda and Tyler first shared their vision months earlier. The room had been transformed with lighting that created intimate conversation areas while maintaining the energy needed for celebration. The dinner service was flawless, the speeches were heartfelt and entertaining, and the transition to dancing happened naturally as the evening evolved. But for me, the most meaningful part of the reception was dancing with my father during the family dance portion of the evening. It was the first time we'd shared a dance since I was a child, and it felt like a physical representation of the relationship we were rebuilding. I'm proud of you, Maya, he said as we swayed to the music. Not just for tonight, but for everything you've accomplished. I'm proud of me too, I said, surprising myself with the confidence in my voice. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, I found myself standing in the venue I'd created, surrounded by family who were finally seeing me clearly. The woman who'd left home 3 years earlier with hurt feelings and uncertain prospects had become someone who could orchestrate celebrations, build businesses, and choose forgiveness without sacrificing strength. Tyler and Amanda's wedding was ending, but something new was beginning. A version of family that honored everyone's individual accomplishments while building shared joy. It had taken a wedding to bring us together, but perhaps that was fitting. Weddings, after all, are about new beginnings. The cleanup after Tyler and Amanda's wedding should have felt like the end of a long journey, but instead it felt like the beginning of something entirely new. As the last guests departed and the vendor teams began their systematic breakdown of the celebration I'd orchestrated, I found myself standing in the main event space with my family, all of us seeming reluctant to let this transformative day come to an end. Amanda had changed from her wedding gown into a comfortable traveling dress, but she still wore the radiant smile of a bride who'd experienced her perfect day. Tyler had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. My parents stood together near the windows overlooking the river, occasionally glancing my way with expressions that seemed to mix pride, regret, and hope in equal measure. "Maya," Amanda said, approaching me with a small wrapped box. "Tyler? And I have something for you. We know you don't usually accept gifts from clients, but we're not clients anymore. We're family." I accepted the box with curiosity, unwrapping it to reveal a beautiful crystal paperweight engraved with the date and "With love and gratitude from Tyler and Amanda Chen." But it was the accompanying note that made my breath catch. "To Maya, who taught us that the best celebrations happen when everyone's talents are recognized and everyone's presence is valued. Thank you for giving us the perfect beginning." "This is beautiful," I said, genuinely moved by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "It's also practical," Tyler added with a grin that reminded me of our childhood. "Every successful business owner needs a good paperweight." The comment sparked something that had been building throughout the evening, a recognition that my family was finally seeing me not just as Maya Chen, the daughter and sister, but as Maya Carter, the accomplished businesswoman. The integration of these two identities felt both foreign and natural, like putting on a piece of clothing that fit perfectly, but that I'd never worn before. As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave Cascade, my mother approached me with an expression I'd rarely seen from her. Vulnerability mixed with determination. "Maya, I know we have a lot of work to do to rebuild our relationship, but I want you to know something. Watching you tonight, seeing how you've grown and what you've accomplished, I realized that losing you for 3 years wasn't just our punishment for failing you. It was our loss of the privilege of witnessing your success." Her words carried a weight that went beyond simple apology. She was acknowledging not just the hurt they'd caused, but the experiences they'd missed because of their inability to see and support my potential. "I've missed you too, Mom," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. "I've missed having family to share achievements with, people who understand the history behind the success. Would you be willing to have dinner with us next Sunday? Not a big family gathering, just the 4 of us. I'd like to hear about your business, your plans, your life. I'd like to know my daughter again." The invitation represented something I'd waited years to receive, genuine interest in my life and accomplishments. But it also represented a choice I had to make about whether I was ready to rebuild relationships that had once caused me significant pain. "I'd like that," I said, making the choice toward connection rather than continued distance. Tyler and Amanda left for their honeymoon the following Tuesday, but not before Tyler made a request that would significantly impact the trajectory of my business. He asked if I would coordinate the wedding of his best friend, who'd been impressed by the celebration we'd created and wanted exactly what Tyler and Amanda had, but for us. "It's not just about the event coordination," Tyler explained during our coffee meeting Monday morning. "It's about what you do that makes celebrations feel authentic and meaningful. That's not something you can replicate by copying the logistics. The referral from Tyler's wedding led to 3 more bookings within the first month, all from guests who'd attended the celebration and been impressed by both the flawless execution and the personal touches that made the evening feel special, rather than simply expensive. But more significantly, Tyler's public acknowledgement of my role in creating his wedding had shifted something in Portland's social and business circles. I was no longer just Maya Carter, successful event coordinator. I was Maya Chen Carter, the accomplished businesswoman who'd created one of the city's most talked-about celebrations while navigating complex family dynamics with grace and professionalism. The combination of personal story and professional excellence created a narrative that resonated with potential clients in ways I hadn't anticipated. People weren't just hiring Cascade for our reputation for flawless events. They were choosing us because they trusted us to understand the emotional significance of their celebrations and to honor the relationships involved. 6 weeks after the wedding, Marcus and I met to discuss the future of our partnership. The success of Tyler's wedding had accelerated our business growth beyond our most optimistic projections, and we needed to make decisions about expansion. "We have 3 options," Marcus said, reviewing the financial projections spread across my office table. "We can maintain our current size and simply enjoy higher profit margins. We can expand the current venue to handle larger events, or we can open a second location." Each option represented different implications for my role and my future. Maintaining current size would allow me to personally oversee every event, ensuring the level of service that had built our reputation. Expanding would mean delegating, more responsibility while building a larger business. Opening a second location would essentially mean becoming a multi-location business owner rather than a hands-on event coordinator. "What's your instinct?" Marcus asked. "I think we expand the current location and add a dedicated smaller space for intimate celebrations. That allows us to serve a broader range of clients while maintaining the personal service that sets us apart. And it keeps you involved in the day-to-day operations. For now. But I'm also starting to think about what comes after hands-on event coordination. I love creating celebrations, but I'm also interested in the broader hospitality industry." The conversation represented a shift in my thinking that had been developing since Tyler's wedding. Managing that celebration while navigating family dynamics had shown me capabilities I hadn't fully recognized before. Not just the ability to coordinate events, but the ability to manage complex situations involving multiple stakeholders with competing interests and emotional investments. 3 months after Tyler's wedding, I received a phone call that would test these broader skills in ways I hadn't anticipated. The caller was Jennifer Morrison, president of the Portland Business Council, and she had an unusual request. "Maya, I'm calling because several of our board members attended your brother's wedding and were incredibly impressed by both the event itself and how you handled what they understood was a complex family situation. I'm glad they enjoyed the celebration." "They did, but more than that, they were impressed by your professionalism and emotional intelligence in managing difficult dynamics. We have a situation that requires similar skills, and we'd like to hire you for a consulting project that goes beyond traditional event planning." The project she described was both intriguing and challenging. A major Portland corporation was planning a company-wide celebration to mark their 50th anniversary, but the event was complicated by recent family business conflicts that had created tensions among the founding family members who would all be attending. "We need someone who can design a celebration that honors the company's history while managing family dynamics that could potentially disrupt the event. Based on what our board members observed at your brother's wedding, we think you have the skills to handle both the logistical and emotional aspects of this challenge." The consulting fee they offered was substantial, but more importantly, the project represented an opportunity to expand my expertise into corporate family dynamics and organizational celebrations. It was the kind of work that could differentiate Cascade from other event venues and position us as specialists in complex, high-stakes celebrations. I accepted the project, which led to 6 months of intensive work that was equal parts event planning, family therapy, and corporate consulting. The anniversary celebration was ultimately successful, but the process taught me as much about human nature and family dynamics as it did about event management. More significantly, the project opened doors to a new category of work that combined my event planning expertise with skills in managing complex relationships and emotionally charged situations. Within a year, 30% of Cascade's business involved what we started calling complex celebration consulting, events where the logistical challenges were secondary to the interpersonal dynamics. The personal growth that came from this professional evolution was equally significant. Managing other families' complicated relationships while maintaining professional boundaries required me to develop emotional skills that served me well beyond work contexts. I became better at setting boundaries, communicating clearly about expectations, and finding solutions that honored everyone's needs without compromising my own values. These skills proved essential when my own family began the process of rebuilding our relationships. The weekly dinners that started after Tyler's wedding evolved into regular communication that was both more honest and more respectful than our previous family interactions. The conversations weren't always easy. There were discussions about years of feeling invisible, explanations of decisions that had hurt everyone involved, and negotiations about how to move forward without pretending the past hadn't happened. But they were conversations between adults who genuinely cared about each other, rather than family members operating from old patterns and assumptions. My father, in particular, made efforts to understand and support my business that went far beyond polite interest. He introduced me to contacts in his real estate network who might need event services, asked thoughtful questions about my expansion plans, and offered business advice that was actually helpful rather than condescending. "I'm learning to see you as the accomplished businesswoman you've become, rather than the daughter I remember from 10 years ago," he told me during one of our dinners. "It's an adjustment, but it's also inspiring. You've built something remarkable." My mother's approach to rebuilding our relationship was different, but equally meaningful. She began attending some of the events I coordinated, not as family oversight, but as genuine support for my work. Having her in the audience during celebrations I'd created, seeing her pride in my professional accomplishments, filled a need I hadn't fully acknowledged. Tyler and Amanda, meanwhile, became some of my most enthusiastic advocates. Tyler regularly referred business contacts to Cascade, while Amanda developed a friendship with me that existed independently of our family connection. We discovered shared interests in art and travel that had nothing to do with wedding planning or family dynamics. 1 year after Tyler's wedding, Amanda and I took a weekend trip to San Francisco together. Just the two of us, as friends rather, than as sisters-in-law navigating complicated family history. During that trip, she made an observation that crystallized something I'd been thinking about but hadn't articulated. "You know what I admire most about how you've handled this whole situation?" she said as we sat in a wine bar overlooking the bay. "You didn't let your hurt turn into bitterness. You used it as motivation to build something beautiful." It wasn't always easy to choose construction over destruction, but you did choose it consistently, even when you could have justified making different choices. Her words made me realize that the most significant transformation hadn't been in my professional success or even in my family relationships. It had been in my understanding of my own strength and resilience. I'd learned that I could be hurt without being broken, that I could forgive without forgetting, and that I could rebuild relationships while maintaining the boundaries necessary to protect my own well-being. 18 months after Tyler's wedding, Cascade Events Center completed its expansion, adding the intimate celebration space I'd envisioned along with upgraded facilities that allowed us to handle larger corporate events. The grand reopening celebration was attended by over 300 guests, including family, friends, clients, and Portland business leaders who'd become part of my professional network. The evening was a perfect showcase of everything Cascade had become: elegant, sophisticated, and deeply personal. But for me, the most meaningful moment came when Tyler stood up during the toasts to acknowledge not just my professional achievements, but the journey that had brought us all to that point. 2 years ago, Maya was the sister we'd lost touch with because we'd failed to see her worth, he said to the gathered crowd. Tonight, she's the accomplished businesswoman we're honored to know, and the family member we're grateful to have back in our lives. This celebration represents not just the success of her business, but the power of choosing growth over resentment and connection over distance. The applause that followed felt different from professional recognition. It was acknowledgement from a community that had witnessed my journey and respected both the destination and the path I'd taken to reach it. As the evening concluded and guests began departing, I found myself standing in the venue I'd built, surrounded by relationships I'd rebuilt and opportunities I'd created. The woman who'd left her brother's engagement party feeling invisible and undervalued had become someone who created visibility and value for others while claiming both for herself. Marcus approached me as the last vendors finished their cleanup. "So, what's next?" he asked, a question that had become our traditional way of ending major celebrations. "I've been thinking about that," I said. "Cascade is successful beyond what we imagined, but I'm starting to think about broader applications for what we've learned about managing complex celebrations and family dynamics." "Such as?" "I've been approached by 3 other cities about consulting on venue development and complex event management. There might be opportunities to expand our approach beyond Portland." "You mean franchising the Cascade model?" "Not franchising exactly, but perhaps developing training programs for other venues that want to specialize in emotionally complex celebrations. Teaching other event professionals how to manage the interpersonal dynamics that can make or break important events." The idea had been developing for months as I worked with families and organizations facing celebration challenges that went beyond logistics. There seemed to be a genuine need for professionals who understood both the practical and emotional aspects of creating meaningful gatherings. It would mean traveling more, building relationships in other markets, developing curriculum for training programs. It would also mean sharing your expertise with people who could benefit from it, Marcus pointed out. That seems consistent with who you've become. He was right. The Maya Chen who'd left home 3 years earlier had been focused on proving her worth to people who'd failed to recognize it. The Maya Chen Carter who stood in Cascade that night was interested in creating value for people who were ready to appreciate it. 6 months later, I launched Chen Carter Consulting, a division of Cascade focused on helping other venues and event professionals manage complex celebrations involving family dynamics, corporate politics, or emotionally charged situations. The first training program was attended by 25 event professionals from across the Pacific Northwest, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. "You're not just teaching event planning," one participant observed. "You're teaching emotional intelligence and conflict resolution skills that apply far beyond celebrations." The observation was accurate and revealing. My expertise had evolved beyond event coordination into something more broadly applicable, the ability to create environments where people could celebrate despite complicated relationships, honor achievements without ignoring conflicts, and build connections that acknowledged past hurt while choosing future growth. 2 years after Tyler's wedding, I received an invitation that represented the full circle of my journey. Amanda's sister Emma was getting married, and she specifically requested that I coordinate her celebration. "I want what Tyler and Amanda had," she explained during our initial consultation. "Not the specific details, but the feeling that every element of the celebration honored who we are while bringing out the best in our families." Planning Emma's wedding was both easier and more complex than coordinating Tyler's had been. The logistics were straightforward because I now had years of experience and a proven system, but the emotional significance was layered with awareness of how much had changed in the 2 years since I'd rebuilt my relationships with family while establishing my professional reputation. Emma's wedding became another showcase of cascades, evolution, and my growth as both an event professional and a family member. But more than that, it became evidence that the skills I'd developed in rebuilding my own family relationships were transferable to helping other families navigate their own complex dynamics. The celebration was flawless, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. But the moment that meant the most to me came during the reception, when Emma's mother approached me with tears in her eyes. "Maya, thank you for creating something beautiful that honored everyone involved. Emma told me about your own family's journey, and seeing how you've turned that experience into the ability to help other families means everything to us." As I drove home from Emma's wedding, I reflected on how different my life had become. From what I'd imagined 3 years earlier when I left Tyler's engagement party feeling invisible and undervalued, I'd built a successful business, rebuilt meaningful family relationships, and developed expertise that was valued by people whose opinions mattered to me. But perhaps most importantly, I'd learned that strength didn't require independence from relationships. It required the wisdom to choose which relationships to rebuild and on what terms. I'd discovered that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing past hurt. It meant choosing not to let that hurt define my future possibilities. The Maya Chen who'd served drinks at her brother's engagement party had been seeking recognition and validation from people who weren't equipped to provide it. The Maya Chen Carter, who now created celebrations for families across the Pacific Northwest, had learned to recognize and validate her own worth while building relationships with people who could appreciate and reciprocate that recognition. 3. Years after Tyler's wedding, I stood in the venue I'd built, preparing for another celebration that would showcase the expertise I'd developed in creating meaningful gatherings for complex family situations. But this time, the celebration was different. This time, I was the bride. The man I was marrying had been a client initially, a corporate executive whose company anniversary celebration had required delicate management of family business dynamics. Our professional relationship had evolved into friendship, then into something deeper, built on mutual respect for each other's accomplishments and shared understanding of the work required to build meaningful success. David understood that Maya Chen Carter came as a complete package: the successful businesswoman, the complex family relationships, the hard-won wisdom about creating celebration in the midst of complicated dynamics. He appreciated all of it, including the experiences that had shaped my approach to relationships and my insistence on maintaining independence within connection. Planning my own wedding was both the ultimate test of my professional skills and the ultimate expression of personal growth. I was creating a celebration that honored my relationship with David while acknowledging the family relationships I'd rebuilt and the professional community I'd developed. Tyler served as my man of honor, a role that perfectly captured how our relationship had evolved beyond traditional sibling dynamics into genuine adult friendship built on mutual respect and shared history. Amanda coordinated many of the details I couldn't manage while being the bride, applying skills she'd learned from watching me work. My parents walked me down the aisle together, a gesture that symbolized their joint commitment to supporting my choices and celebrating my happiness. The moment was particularly meaningful because it represented their recognition of me as an adult capable of making decisions about my own life and relationships. The wedding reception was held at Cascade, naturally, but it was a celebration, unlike any I'd coordinated before. This time, I was the center of the celebration rather than the professional creating it for others. This time, the emotional significance was entirely personal rather than something I was managing for clients. During the toasts, Tyler spoke about our journey as siblings, acknowledging the years we'd lost and celebrating the relationship we'd rebuilt. Maya taught our family that love isn't diminished by honesty about hurt, and that forgiveness is possible when everyone commits to growth, he said. She also taught us that success is sweetest when it's shared with people who understand the journey it took to achieve it. David's toast focused on the woman he'd fallen in love with, someone who understood that strength and vulnerability could coexist. that professional success and personal relationships could enhance rather than compete with each other, and that the best celebrations honored both individual achievements and shared connections. As the evening concluded and our guests began departing, I found myself dancing with my new husband in the venue I'd built, surrounded by family I'd chosen to reconnect with and friends I'd made through work that fulfilled me. The transformation. From invisible daughter to celebrated businesswoman and beloved family member felt complete, but not finished. The next chapter would bring new challenges and opportunities, expanding the consulting business, potentially starting a family with David, continuing to navigate the ongoing evolution of family relationships that required constant attention and care. But those challenges would be met by someone who'd learned that she could create the life she wanted through persistent effort, strategic choices, and the wisdom to choose connection over distance whenever possible. Standing in cascade events. Center on my wedding night, I realized that the venue had become more than a business or even a symbol of professional success. It had become the physical representation of what was possible when someone refused to accept other people's limitations on their potential and chose instead to build something beautiful from their own vision and effort. The girl who'd been seated in the kitchen at her brother's engagement party had grown into a woman who owned the venue where celebrations happened. But more than that, she'd grown into someone who understood that true success wasn't just about achieving professional recognition. It was about creating a life that honored both personal accomplishments and meaningful relationships. The journey, from invisible to undeniable, had required 3 years, countless difficult conversations, the building of a business from nothing, and the rebuilding of family relationships from a foundation of mutual respect rather than obligation. It had been worth every challenging moment. As David and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I took one last look around the venue that had been the stage for so much transformation. Tyler's wedding that had reunited our family, Emma's wedding that had demonstrated my growth, and now my own wedding that had celebrated the life I'd built through determination, forgiveness, and the courage to believe I deserved more than I'd been offered. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to create celebrations for other families navigating their own complex dynamics. Next month would bring expansion of the consulting business to 3 new cities. Next year would bring whatever challenges and achievements came with building a marriage while running a successful business. But tonight, I was simply Maya Chen Carter, surrounded by love I'd chosen and success I'd earned in a venue I'd built. Through vision and persistence, the transformation was complete, but the story was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.